Hello everybody, welcome. I'm going to do a video on Inner Earth, the Agartha network, and one of the most popular inner cities in Inner Earth, which is Telos. So the reason that I'm doing this video is because these inner cities within Earth are what is popping up first onto the earth plane, onto the surface of the earth plane as fifth dimensional consciousness or new earth that we're starting to feel and experience on top of the physical earth plane. And it is the entire reason, well, one of the main reasons that this entire Agartha network, Inner Earth, inner cities were created. So let's begin by defining the Agartha network and Inner Earth. So Inner Earth is a way of describing multidimensional cities that are not physical in nature, they're not third dimensional, and they're not fourth dimensional. They are fifth, sixth, and seventh, which still has form, but they're in a higher dimension. They're fifth, sixth, and seventh dimensional portals that are held like pockets within the physical earth plane. And these pockets or portals, if you move yourself into them by either bilocating, going there in your dream state, right? You are raising your frequency to bring yourself into those portals. You experience what feels like a city. And the confusion that people have, I think a lot, is that it's an actual physical city that you walk into. Your physical body, this third dimensional body, cannot walk into Inner Earth. It cannot walk into these inner cities or the Agartha network. Okay, it can't. It's too dense. So we move into these portals, these inner earth cities, the Agartha network, through the dream state or by location. The Agartha network is a system or a network of many different cities, fifth, sixth, and seventh dimensional portals that are all in the physical earth plane right now, all over the world. And you can imagine it like an underground sort of subway system, right? Where there's all these stops and it's underground. And if you are in a higher dimensional frequency, you can move through this network and experience all these different cities. But please, let's not, the semantics of the language of a city makes it seem like there's physical cities in the earth plane. No, you've got to start to remember how dimensions work. There is a fifth dimension in front of us right now, right? That we can't really see because our bodies are not vibrating. There are higher dimensional beings standing with me right now. We can't see it because they are held in a higher dimension. This is what the quantum field is all about. It's a higher dimension. And so although it is right here, right now, if I am not vibrating at that frequency and dimension, I won't see it. And so when we talk about the Agartha network or Inner Earth, we are talking about pockets or portals. Imagine it like a cloud that is holding a much higher dimension than the physicality of third dimension or fourth dimension. And when you move yourself into that portal, you literally are standing in a completely different reality. There are structures, temples, buildings perhaps, different types of beings, crystals, water, oceans, lakes, gardens, meadows, mountains. There's all kinds of structures or natural, what would you call that? Natural mountains, natural nature, right? Nature. But it's in a much higher frequency. So it's vibrating. It's almost like there's this vibration to it. It's almost crystalline, right? And so it looks different and yet it is still similar to what we see. Okay? The Agartha network and these inner cities and inner Earth began thousands of years ago when the Earth was beginning to move, or when the Earth did move down into a third dimensional field. So for millions of years, the Earth was in a fifth dimensional field. She was vibrating in 5D. Every being and human form on her was vibrating and holding a 5D field, 5D consciousness. And these 5D humans that we call the Atlanteans and the Lemurians, those were two civilizations that are very well known. There are other civilizations that were around at that time as well. When they were on the 5D Earth plane, and they knew that the Earth was going to be reconstructed in a 3D because she had been pulled down, okay? And I did a video on this. I think you can watch it on the Lemurian Atlantis. I talked a little bit about how we shifted down. It took millions of years. I'm not going to go into it in this video. But it took millions of years, and eventually the Earth was starting to get pulled down into a third dimensional field. And the decision was to wipe out the entire planetary body and begin again in 3D. When that was happening, knowing that the Earth was going to be wiped out, begin again in 3D, on its way back up to 5D, the fifth dimensional humans that were on the Earth plane and higher dimensional light beings that were off the Earth plane assisting the humans in the 5D bodies decided to create a network of inner cities, portals, that would hold 5, 6, and 7D frequencies. Most of them were in 5D, but there were 6 and 7D as well, for the sole purpose, well, a couple purposes, but the one main purpose of doing this was to hold those higher consciousnesses, 5, 6, and 7 dimensional frequencies, inside the physical Earth to assist her as she started moving her frequency back up. They would hold those frequencies. And so they created energetically, which is very easy to do from a higher dimensional field, these cities. And there were many human Lemurians, Atlanteans, and humans from other civilizations that moved themselves energetically into these portals for the purpose of assisting Earth and humanity as Earth and humanity begun to ascend from 3D back up to 5D. So they took artifacts, they took structures, they took crystals, they created in a portal of 5, 6, and 7D these beautiful cities. And the higher dimensional light beings that were assisting the 5D humans in creating these portals were able to create 6 and 7D cities as well. And you can imagine these cities or inner Earth portals as like airports, okay? Even though they're cities, you can also visualize them as airports where higher dimensional beings would come and go all the time. So energetically, this may be difficult to kind of comprehend, but energetically, you can create a portal wherever you want in a lower dimensional field by intending to bring that frequency into a physical structure and hold the portal in that structure. So the structure is Earth. It's a 3D form. And these beings are higher dimensional. The fifth dimensional humans were higher dimensional. And it wasn't challenging to take that energy, to take that frequency, and to intend to create a portal inside that form. But there has to be an actual structure that's going to hold that portal, right? So it has to be some sort of mountain, or sometimes they do it in oceans, bodies of water. A lot of times they'll do it in rocks. So really, really, really large rock structures. They will move the portals into those rock structures. A lot of times, any sort of structure that is going down into the ground as well, they will use as portals. These are not on top of the earth though. So when I say rock structures or these things, whatever structure may be on top, it's going down into the earth. So they use structures like physicality within the earth plane, okay, to create and to move these portals. There are some that are in the water, that are in the ocean, but they're deep, 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 deep down, almost like in caves or like crevices, rock formations, dense structures that are really deep in the ocean. But again, most of these are inside the earth, and they're in like rock structures within the earth. Okay, that's how they move the portal into it, and that structure holds that portal. And so they intended all of these cities when the earth was moving down, for the purpose of holding these frequencies. The other reason, and there were a lot of Lemurians and Atlanteans that moved into and held themselves as light workers in these cities the entire time that Earth has been moving from 3D to 5D, which has been about 25,000 years, somewhere around there. So the other reason that the Agartha network was created was so that these higher dimensional humans, fifth dimensional humans, and the higher dimensional light beings would be able to move into these fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional, and seventh dimensional pockets or portals or cities, and access the human much easier. So they could access the human by pulling the human during the sleep state, pulling the etheric body, i.e. the etheric body would move into these portals and experience these higher dimensional frequencies, receive information and messages, receive teachings, receive downloads, receive clearings, receive activations. It was like school. So the actual human physical body doesn't go into these portals or into these cities. The etheric body does. The etheric body is the body, it's an energetic form, energetic sort of field that holds your light, the consciousness that you are, that dropped into the human form. That consciousness that you are is held in what we call the etheric body. And the etheric body is what travels every night in your dream state. And it is the etheric body that takes you into the Agartha network, into the inner cities, inner earth cities. To remember, to play, to enjoy, to relax, to receive information, activations, upgrades, teachings, all kinds of things happen. And all of you have been to these inner earth cities. All of you. There are many higher dimensional light beings in these cities. So the sixth dimensional and seventh dimensional cities do not hold Lemurians and Atlanteans, only the fifth dimensional cities. The sixth and seventh dimensional cities hold the light beings, the higher frequency light beings. Palladians come in, Arcturians come in, the Sirians come in. Many hundreds of different types of light beings will bring their frequency down and move into these cities, the Agartha network, in order to access us easier. So it's almost like instead of going into a different city, you just go to the house next door. Okay, so it's easier for the etheric body to move into the next door neighbor's house than it is to move to go to another country or another city or something like that, right? Granted, it's all quantum, but it's an easier flow for the etheric body. The etheric body accesses it easier, okay? And it's a constant. And the reason that your etheric body is taking you there over and over and over again is not only to receive information, messages, remembrances, right? But also to experience this 5D consciousness that the earth and you as the third dimensional human is shifting into. So you're going there, you're experiencing 5D consciousness, you're coming back into your body, you're waking up. And although you may not remember, there is an unconscious remembrance of this 5D field. This 5D new earth that we are all shifting into. And what is occurring also is that you're connecting with your star families when you go in there, or your families of light, your guides, the ascended masters, Jesus, Sanat Kumara, Saint Germain, Katumi, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, all these beautiful beings. Why, you ask? Why go in there? Well, you can go anywhere and connect with these beings. They're with you right here, right? But the reason that you go into these places is because it is like a homecoming. It's like, oh my God, you guys have been here the whole time. Oh my God, this has been created for us being the third dimensional human form ascending into 5D. So there are many reasons for this Agartha network. One, holding 5D, 6D, and 7D frequencies. They're holding those frequencies. Two, accessing the human, the etheric body, and the human, the conscious awakening human, more and more. It's easier to access. You can actually currently bilocate into these cities. You can bilocate into inner earth. And you can sit with these Lemurians, Atlanteans, light beings, dragons, fairies. You can sit with them and you're in a completely different reality. You're sitting by an ocean, right? And it's a 5D consciousness. It's new earth, right? And there's a feeling of being home. So it's like you get to go and get a reprieve. You get to relax, right? And these Agartha network inner earth cities are becoming more and more busy with higher dimensional light beings coming in and out of them because there is so much activity and acceleration of this ascension process. Humans are waking up faster and faster and faster. And so as the human wakes up, they unconsciously in the dream state are moving into these inner cities to get activations, remembrances, knowingnesses, clearings. All kinds of stuff is happening in these inner cities. And the third reason for this whole entire Agartha network and inner earth is that when the earth, which is right now, is capable of holding 5D consciousness, and when the human collective starts to hold more 5D consciousness, which is right now, these inner earth portals, pockets of 5D consciousness start to bubble up and almost seep through and into the top of the earth plane. And we get to start to not only feel 5D consciousness just sort of with the earth, 5D consciousness in our body, but we are standing in these pockets of 5D consciousness, i.e. of new earth, and they're all over the earth plane. They're literally like boiling up, almost like lava coming up from the earth, right? You see lava coming up like from the ocean sometimes in Hawaii. right? It's like the most bizarre thing. There's this lava, hot lava coming up right where the land meets the water. Visualize it like that. There are these pockets of 5D consciousness, which is really inner Earth, inner cities that have been holding 5D consciousness for us. And they're starting to literally, energetically seep above the earth plane and on top of the physical earth. So that when we as humans walk around now, we find ourselves unconsciously or consciously standing in a pocket of 5D consciousness, which, if you're aware of it, is actually you standing on an inner earth city that is still there in that pocket, in that dimensional field, but it is also now above. And so when you find yourself in these pockets of new earth, understand that it is actually an inner earth city. It's part of the Agartha network. It's been planned. It's a divine designed plan this whole time. It is one of the main reasons that this entire network was designed. And now, not only is this 5D new earth consciousness popping up, but Earth is holding that 5D consciousness. Our physical bodies are holding that 5D consciousness. And what we're going to start to experience are the beings, the human 5D beings, the Lemurians, the Atlanteans, other light beings that are in a 5D field. We're going to start to feel them while we stand in those pockets and eventually start to see them. Because now they're starting to move up onto the surface of the earth plane to say, hello, we've been here the whole time for you guys. They've been serving humanity in the earth plane. They've been serving you and me and all of us. They've been assisting. And many of you not only remember being in these inner earth cities, but you remember creating them perhaps. So there's many of us that either remember the Agartha network being set up from that 5D earth field in the 5D human form as Earth was being cleared out so that it can begin again in 3D. You remember the courageous 5D humans and light beings. The Lemurians and Atlantean are the 5D humans, right? Lemurians and Atlanteans are humans that were in a 5D field in a 5D body. You remember watching them courageously say, all go in. I will hold that frequency for humanity in the earth for however long it takes, knowing that in a 3D field, time stretches, and so it's much longer. And so instead of these Lemurians, Atlanteans, and other beings that were assisting, instead of them exiting off the earth plane, going back to wherever they were existing as consciousness prior to dropping into the human form, instead of doing that, and perhaps dropping back down into a third dimensional body at some point, they chose to do their work in the Agartha network, creating these cities and holding themselves inside Earth, in these portals, in these pockets. And so currently it is the 5th dimensional portals and pockets and inner cities that are starting to, and eventually 6th and eventually 7. So not only are we getting assistance from above, from all of these higher dimensional beings, from the sun, but we are getting assistance from inside Earth. And there are so many beings moving in and out of these portals on the earth plane over and over and over again. Many times when the human sees UFOs, ships, craft in the sky, many times they are moving in and out of these portals that are in the earth. And one of the most popular inner earth cities that I want to talk about is Telos. Telos is probably the most accessed inner earth city right now. It is like JFK, right? Like think of the most busiest airport in the world, and that's Telos right now. Telos is a Lemurian fifth dimensional city that is inside Mount Shasta. So it's inside the earth. So this mountain goes underneath the earth. It's not just on top, right? And so this portal is held inside the mountain, but underneath. And it is a field of consciousness. And it is a very familiar city that many of you have experienced in your waking state, perhaps through bilocation, or in your dream state all the time with the etheric body. We feel like when we are there, we are at home, we are at peace. Many of you, if you have been Lemurian or Atlantean, meaning millions of years ago, you incarnated down into a fifth dimensional form, human form, you experienced yourself perhaps as a Lemurian or an Atlantean. And so when you go into Telos, it's like going home. You're like, oh my God, I know this. I've done this. I've been here. The Lemurian priestesses, the Atlantean beings that come in, the humans that come to you when you go into Telos, it's like you're with your brothers and sisters. All different dimensional light beings are there. There's beautiful, huge temples. There's crystals that communicate with you, that heal you, that you work with, right? There is water that is basically so crystalline that if you put it on your body, it will heal any aspect of your body. And so when you go there, either in the dream state or in the waking state, there is so much information that you are receiving. On top of the fact that you are digesting or experiencing 5D consciousness. And so again, when you are coming out of it, waking up, or even just consciously coming out of that space from bilocating, you know exactly what 5D New Earth feels like. You know what New Earth feels like, right? And you know that there is so much more happening here than what we see on top of the earth in the physical reality. There is so much more going on inside the earth plane than we could possibly understand. So Telos is a inner calling that you may have, a knowingness you may have, right? Because you've been there. Maybe you helped create it, right? The Lemurians created Telos. And the way you can access Telos or any other inner earth city is through intention and bilocation. So bilocation, I've done a webinar on it. It's $10 or $11. The link is down below. It teaches you how to bilocate. We all know how to, we just forgot. And as you start practicing it, it becomes easier and easier. Bilocation is when you consciously are awake, you're in your physical body, but you intend with your etheric body to move into a different dimensional field, whether it's inner earth, Telos, another Agartha network city, whether it's a ship, a craft, a planet. You can go anywhere with your etheric body in any dimensional field. You're accessing the quantum, you can go anywhere. It's just a matter of practice, of trusting, and learning how to kind of see through and into another dimensional field. And so what many of you may be feeling called to do, or just remembering in general, is this entire Agartha network, this entire inner earth, because you've been there thousands of times. And it is in this now moment, as we are ascending into these higher states, the body is, the earth body is, these inner cities are coming up. The beings that are in these cities are starting to come up. And this is how it works. This is how we get assistance. And this is what's happening. This is what's happening. So that's inner earth. That's the Agartha network in a nutshell. Right? Let I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to share about it. You know, it's difficult at times to sort of conceptualize with our linear third dimensional minds how these cities are held, right? So if you're asking the question, well, how is there a city in there? How is there structures? How is that? You have to go beyond the third dimensional physicality. You have to understand that you have to see dimensional fields as layers. And it's not until you are in that dimensional field that you can see what is in that dimensional field. So until you're in that dimensional field, it looks like nothing. It looks like there's nothing there. It's gone. It doesn't exist. So when you think about inner Earth, you're like, well, there's just Earth is just in there. It's just Earth's body. Until you shift into a higher frequency. And then when you do that, you can see what is actually in there. It's the same thing with our skies, you guys. There are thousands upon thousands of craft in the sky right now. That if we actually woke up into a higher consciousness and we were vibrating, completely anchored and vibrating in 5D, we would see so many craft. It would blow our minds. The reason you can't see them is because they are vibrating and holding a higher frequency than your physical form. So just because we feel 5D consciousness and we're accessing it and we're holding it, doesn't mean that we're going to see the 5D field right now. The reason is our bodies are holding much more of a third and fourth dimension. So we're anchored in that dimension. And so when we look out, that is what we see. The body has to anchor into the fifth dimensional field. It's very different than holding 5D consciousness. When the body has anchored into a 5D field, then 99% of the frequency in the body is 5D. And the 5D is vibrating out 5D. And it is anchored in the fifth dimensional field. That's all it sees as its reality. Right now, 20-30% of the body is holding 5D perhaps, right? Somewhere around there. Doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're still anchored in 3D. You're still anchored in 4D perhaps. The body is still very dense. So there are many dimensions in front of us right now that we can't see. There are many beings in many dimensions that are in front of us right now. That are standing right here, that are floating around us, that are in the skies, and that are in the earth. And that's the inner earth. That's the Agartha network. So let me know if you have any questions down below. I'll try to answer some. Maybe I'll do a part 2 if it's necessary. But again, just a quick little synopsis of what Telos is, Agartha network, inner earth, all these beautiful cities. And if you find yourself standing on the earth plane and you feel that you have just moved into a physical sort of pocket of new earth consciousness, understand that literally directly below you is an inner earth city. And that is where that pocket of 5D consciousness is coming from. So we're receiving 5D consciousness from below, we're receiving high frequency light from above, and the physical body and the earth's body is integrating all of it. It's beautiful. All right, I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this video. If you think there's anybody else that wants to understand this or hear this, send it their way. And again, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe. And I love you. Thanks for being here. Mwah.